I'm sure most of us have had this experience where we've attended some training and come across a great concept or acronym and thought, oh, I'm definitely going to apply that. Only a few weeks later, post training, we are struggling to remember the concept, let alone apply that in practice. I recently came across this phrase, throw dirt at VUCA, at a leadership program that I immensely enjoyed attending. And this essentially means to be direct, understandable, reliable, and trustworthy when facing VUCA scenarios, which are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Most of us have heard the term VUCA, I think, but perhaps less so the DURT framework, which was introduced by John Mertz. Now, in order to deepen my understanding, because I do think DURT can be a useful framework in practice, I thought, why not generate some AI scenarios, some concrete examples and scenarios that will help me really see what it's like applying this in practice. That's what I'm showing you today, both where AI gets it more or less right, and also where it really needs some guidance from me to be truly useful. And believe me, it does get it very wrong, which I'll show you later on. So I begin by prompting ChatGPT to generate 5 realistic VUCA scenarios a middle manager in a UK higher education context would face. I ask it to consider competing priorities and provide responses in British English. And what I notice is that it breaks down all the components, so it provides a scenario per component. So one considering ambiguity or complexity, and the last one actually combines the two. So now I'm prompting it to provide 5 scenarios where it's considering all the 4 VUCA components in each scenario. It does come up with some pretty good options. So here it's offering one about restructuring, and I find scenario 2 pretty interesting, a rapid shift to AI in teaching and assessment. Some interesting things like it saying the university is going to mandate AI use. Unlikely, I think. Perhaps that's a controversial statement at this point, but anyway, I like the second one, so I'm asking it to consider this scenario and assume no AI policy or framework is available for the manager to consider. Perhaps I wasn't as specific as I would have liked to be there, but anyway. I do say there is no mandate, but there are varying levels of AI adoption by staff, which I think is true in most cases. So it's now regenerating that scenario, and it does include all 4 elements, which is great. And this one seems a bit more plausible than the other one. I noticed that it's considering some narrative around STEM and also the humanities perspective, which is great, but if it's just a one manager context, I would like it to be a little bit more refined. So I'm asking it to consider a manager who's responsible for one teaching function and asking it to regenerate the scenario, reminding it to consider competing priorities. So now we're getting a little bit more of a focused response. It says, without clear guidance from the university, I don't know whether to encourage AI adoption, limit its use, or wait for leadership to act. I mean, that's pretty good, I'd say. It recognizes that the university has no official stance on AI, and it also provides the DURT response, already applying the framework. And here it's okay. I'd say it's saying create simple practical guidance for staff and students. Now, if you're a manager, you might not be in a position to offer this level of guidance, but I'm challenging it to apply second order thinking. It's also considering what the locus of control would be for the manager. And I'd say this is pretty good. It's considering how staff and students are already using AI, considering the student experience, and also what this manager can realistically control. I'm now challenging it to provide a concise and relatable scenario which can be discussed in a classroom setting. What I want to see is perhaps a couple of paragraphs which it actually generates, which I'm really pleased about, because this is the sort of thing that could potentially go on a slide deck that staff or learners could discuss in a live session. I really like how it poses additional questions for discussion. So, for example, how can you balance innovation, fairness, and workload concerns among staff? So, typically, I would then copy and paste this description, this scenario that I've got into Claude, which is one of my favorite AIs. It's great for creative work and coding, and I've got a professional plan, as you can see. And I'm now asking Claude to consider the scenario and apply the DURT framework by John Mertz. Now, Claude, interestingly, does not apply the DURT framework as I know it. It's not considering the direct, understandable, reliable, trustworthy framework. It's instead using discern, reflect, or something along those lines. And I'm challenging it to use the version that I know. And this is why I think it's so important to not rely on exactly what AI is producing, because it might produce what it thinks it's right or wherever it's extracting the information from. So once I've asked it to consider the framework that I know, it does provide reasonably feasible responses, but it does require a lot of iteration and further consideration before I would use it in any sort of learning setting. I would really love to show you how AI can really mess up at times. So as you can see, I'm asking ChatGPT to provide 2 references for the phrase throw dirt at VUCA. Now, what's really interesting is it's producing 2 journal articles which seem plausible, but I hadn't come across those before. I'd already done a little bit of research on DURT and VUCA on Google outside of ChatGPT, so I'm trying to verify it here by copy-pasting the journal article title into the browser. I do it twice because I want to double check whether it's coming up as a top hit on Google, but interestingly, it's not. And by this point, I check Scholar as well, just to make sure that it's certainly not there. And by this point, I'm pretty convinced that these articles don't exist. So I ask it to check its references. And this is what it comes up with. It's saying, "You're right to ask me to check. The references I provided were not real." Oh dear. Whatever you'd like to call this phenomenon, whether it's a hallucination, a fabrication, this highlights how essential critical thinking is when we are working with these tools. AI can be incredibly helpful to expand our thinking and is an aid for learning, but we need to question, verify, and apply our own judgment every step of the way. It's an iterative process, it's not a quick fix. So, AI helps us generate possibilities we might not have considered, while our experience and expertise help us identify what's valuable and accurate. I'd love to hear your feedback and comments either here on YouTube or on my LinkedIn post, and I'll see you next time.